Thus, the marathon of pining for Rose began. Now, it's been a while since I've spotlighted classic episodes of Doctor Who. Oh, dear God. Now that I'm calling episodes from the new series classic. Oh, dear God. Anyway, since last year I reviewed the Christmas Invasion, I decided, well, wouldn't it be fun every year for Christmas on Narcotic Casserole to go in order as they aired of each of the Doctor Who Christmas specials during the run of the new series. I'm going to leave it there as my feelings about most of the Christmas specials during Russell T Davies' run, because my feelings still remain the same. For those feelings, go ahead and go back and watch the Christmas Invasion review. We're going to jump right in to The Runaway Bride, which, of course, again, was written by Russell T Davies, and this time marked the introduction of Donna Noble. If you actually had to point a gun at my head and ask me who I actually consider to be my favorite companion on the new series, I would actually flat out say Donna Noble is my top one, for the very simple fact that after we had Rose getting all doe-eyed and getting all wet for him, and then having another season where we had Martha getting all wet, but he's getting all broody and whiny about, Rose not being there anymore, pretty much treating Martha like shit. It was nice to have a companion who flat out said, no, I just want to travel the universe, buddy. You're not even my type, which, as we do discover down the line, yeah, the Doctor is definitely not Donna's type. I'm getting ahead of myself, but after this episode aired, Russell T Davies and the crew had so much fun working with Catherine Tate that when the time came when they, had Martha step out of the TARDIS, they were like, okay, we need to get another companion, and they started listing off the traits of the character. They kept going like, yeah, she should be like this, kind of like what Donna was. Yeah, and she should also do that, kind of like what Donna was. And they kept doing that so many times that inevitably they said, have we just thought about asking Catherine Tate to come back? And they did, and the rest is history. But it all started with this episode. I've been very vocal about my loathing of the Ten and Rose thing, because frankly it led to this absolutely obnoxious plague of this particular brand of fan who, because they pretty much are so hardcore thirsty for Ten and Rose action, they just don't want to open up their hearts to anything else afterwards. They always seem to say like, oh, but they'll never be as good as Ten and Rose. And I'm like, you. Firstly, that was actually a pretty toxic relationship, all things considered. This is the one episode where I actually don't mind it as much, because the Doctor has said multiple times that Rose really was the thing that helped him recover from a lot of the pain of the Time War. All of a sudden, out of the blue, here comes this bride showing up in the TARDIS, very loud, what is going on in this place? Tonally is a drastic contradiction to what the scene that we've just been wrenching ourselves over. Then all of a sudden, and that was also the start of Ten doing his, what? Something that really got overused. And when Jodie did it at the end of season 12, I was like, no, just don't. Just really don't. That was Ten's thing, and that got old really fast as well. Tennant's performance in that moment is so pitch perfect, because he's dealing with a heartbreak that just happened right there in that moment, and then all of a sudden, oh, here comes a boisterous bride showing up randomly in the TARDIS against all odds. The TARDIS that is now currently in flight, that just finished burning out a sun so he could talk to someone from another parallel reality, and all of a sudden here she is screaming, being all like, get me to the church! It's such a great rug pull. Because Russell T Davies kind of did that at the end of all of his seasons, though to his credit, he did show restraint at the end of season 4, which really was a good move. It always drove me crazy about most of his season enders, was always punish the Doctor. Oh, by the way, something wacky's about to happen. What the fuck? Another thing I remember about The Runaway Bride when it initially aired is that so many people did not like Donna. Everyone thought she was like, oh, she was loud, she was obnoxious, she kept smacking the Doctor. It's just the fact that she was kind of just that mundane person, and there is a great scene later on when a character calls her out on that, basically saying like, yeah, you are one of the most trivial people on the face of the planet because you're just obsessed with with the new flavor of Pringles. Oh my God, Brad and Angelina. Oh, all these crazy things. Love that this was a deliberate choice on the part of Russell T Davies, and given where Donna is at the beginning of this episode, I love when you think about the road she goes down, it's hinting at the idea that it doesn't take a special breed to want to travel with the Doctor. All it takes is someone who has an experience with him and comes to the realization that there's so much more beyond the sphere of what they know. And Donna is someone who had such a limited sphere when we first meet her, but then she has this one day with the Doctor, and things change for her later on down the line. So when we find her again in Partners in Crime, based on the events here in The Runaway Bride, you totally get where she is at the beginning of that story. And I will say now, after season 4, Runaway Bride's a lot more fun to watch because you know what comes afterwards. Now, it'd be a completely other thing if nothing came of Donna afterwards. But because something did, we ended up getting a lot of good stuff out of it. To be honest, there's just something much more fun when the Doctor has a more antagonistic relationship with his companions. Now, not saying that they have to hate each other, but more to have a companion who has the spine to step up the Doctor and say, hey, asshole, dial it back. And Donna was always the companion who would. I mean, after all the craziness goes down at her wedding reception, explosions and all that, she's saying, like, by the way, dude, there are people who've just been hurt. And actually, like, saying to the Doctor, you're a doctor, you're supposed to be helping people. And the Doctor's, like, ignoring her. And it's like, she kind of represents that thing that the Doctor really, really needs. He really needs a companion to basically tell him no. And throughout the course of this episode, the Doctor is kind of on a warpath. He's kind of like on this self-destructive route, which, as we discover, if he had not met Donna, would have actually led to his death. But Donna was the one who actually told him, hey, get your ass down here and let's get out of here. As previously stated, it was not part of the plan that Donna would later on go on to travel with the Doctor. This was always meant to be her final story, that she was going to be inspired, go off, travel the world, and all that stuff, but do it on her own because she was actually kind of scared of the Doctor. Everything that is great about her and everything that would become great about her really kind of kicked off in this episode. I like how it actually addresses the fallacy of happily ever after. The idea that, it's one thing to say that, I'm going to go out and see the world, but then when we see her again in Partners in Crime, you find out, that's easier said than done. All I could afford was like a tour, was a package tour out to Egypt for a couple weeks, guidebooks, don't drink the water. And she comes to the realization traveling on a package tour out to Egypt is definitely nothing like traveling to the beginning of Earth with the Doctor and facing off against a giant Drider. That leads me to the other reason why The Runaway Bride, I'll say flat out, is a much better episode than The Christmas Invasion, mainly because it is a drastically better paced episode. I believe in my Christmas Invasion review, I pointed out that there's a lot of lags in the story on that one. But The Runaway Bride, much as its title would indicate, that is a freight train. That is a sucker that never stops moving, and it's a blast. Now, it's not, constant, fast pace like all the way through. No, there's actually moments where they take the time to have really good character back and forths, which are a lot of fun and really show the great chemistry between David Tennant and Catherine Tate, chemistry of which they would continue to carry on in a production of Much Ado About Nothing, and even later on with Big Finish Radio. Because The Runaway Bride runs at a much more frantic, much more lighthearted pace, you get some moments which, at the time I saw this, I never thought I'd ever see. Now, you gotta remember, when the new series is coming out, there was still a whole lot of things that classic series fans were never able to see on the classic series, owing heavily to the limited budget and the limited capabilities of the BBC at that time. So there was a lot of really wicked ideas, which sometimes they bit off more than they can chew, like Invasion of the Dinosaurs, but then sometimes it is impressive when they're able to pull it off, like, say, Cheetah People. Now, I say this principally because there is a central chase sequence that still holds up to this very day as far as the technical expertise. I'm still trying to figure out exactly the seams on where David Tennant in the studio is versus the live footage of Donna on the motorway about to jump into the TARDIS. And I'm also going to point out Murray Gold's score in that sequence is outstanding. It's one of those great rollicking adventure scores. And that was another thing Murray Gold did really well under Russell T Davies' run. He knew how you were supposed to feel in a sequence, and he was always able to have Murray Gold deliver the score to pull off those moments. And I remember standing up and cheering because I never thought in my life I'd ever see a sequence where the Doctor is poking his head out of the TARDIS, hanging on a freeway, and having a companion jump from a cab on the motorway into the TARDIS. I'd never thought I'd ever see a sequence like that ever done in Doctor Who, but they pulled it off, and pulled it off with seemingly effortless aplomb. This episode pulled off a full-size giant Drider, and the actress is Sarah Parrish, which I laugh because prior to watching this episode, I had actually watched Blackpool, and she played David Tennant's love interest. So it's kind of a different dynamic here. I know that there are a lot of actors who, when they do a guest spot on Doctor Who, a lot of times they want to play the villains on there because most of the time they're always doing either hardcore dramas or period dramas. They don't really get a chance to ham it up. And Doctor Who is one of those shows where, depending on the story that's being told, an actor is allowed to ham it up. And Sarah Parrish really is bringing the ham on this one. When you look at the Rachnos, I'm just looking at it going, I can't imagine her performance being any other way. Now, admittedly, you can still see that it is on a television budget, because even though it is an impressive creature effect on a grand scale, you don't really see her move a lot. And one thing I know about big-ass spiders, because, of course, of my love of big-ass spider movies, spiders tend to run really, really freaking fast. And I'm pretty sure the Empress of the Rachnos would have been on top of the Doctor before he blew the place up. So you could tell there were still some technical limitations. Apart from the fact that it does introduce a great companion, I really can't say that The Runaway Bride is a great Christmas episode. Apart from the return of the robot Santas, which just feel kind of forced, just because they need a stock henchman character, and it's the Christmas special, so they need to justify bringing back the robot Santas and just say, oh, they're robot mercenaries. I'm like, if they're robots and they're mercenaries, robots wouldn't need to be paid. And if they're robot mercenaries, why do they have... If they're robot mercenaries, that would imply they have autonomy. And that basically means, why do they have a remote control, which the Doctor later on exploits? I'm like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a reason why the robot Santas never really lasted beyond this episode. My overall complaint about this as a Christmas episode is kind of the same as the Christmas Invasion. And you could definitely expect me to have the same complaint when we get into Voyage of the Damned and the next one. So, but apart from that, The Runaway Bride is still a fun episode. And after the nut punch that was Doomsday, we really needed something that was a lot of fun, like a lot of crazy fun. And to this episode's credit, it delivered the goods. So, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that Donna was a utterly annoying companion? Are you one of those who are like going, forever? Or do you think that this may be one of the best Christmas episodes ever? Leave it all in the comments below. And for more festive content, the Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click. Thou shalt be served.